It is a beautiful Wednesday morning, and I'm delighted to welcome you to Newspaper Review today, the 23rd day in the month of June 2021. I am Sarah Oswansa. I trust you had a beautiful night rest. This morning, we have major stories that are making rounds on the front pages of the Nigerian dailies, as well as papers in Kenya. We have in the UAE. We have the Times in UK and also the Washington Post. But a major story that has garnered a lot of talks, we got the report yesterday, how a former member of the House of Representatives in person of Farouk Lowen has been convicted and sentenced to in a court in Abuja over a bribe he received from businessman Dangote in the year 2012. That's a conversation we are going to have, from $10 in 2012. That's a conversation we're going to have on the Newspaper Review this morning. Also, we have a report coming from Jos. UniJos has hired hunters to protect schools and campuses. It is not news to know that insecurity, kidnapping of school students, abductions in schools, even the staff of schools are being abducted these days, and this has prompted the university to take this proactive move by hiring hunters for safety and security. And we had report on Monday how, an Islamic cleric in person of Sheikh Ahmad Gumi, he has been in the news, especially when it comes to banditry and insecurity, as well as kidnapping in the country. He said the federal government would continue to see an increase in cases of kidnapping of school children if they do not pay ransom to bandits. That's a really huge one. They're also talking about the media bill. There has been talks from the Nigerian Guild of Editors how the bill seems to, infringe on the right of the press, despite the fact that the sponsors of the bill have said it would help to curtail the kind of information that is being spread on different pages of the paper, as well as the media generally. All of these are conversations we'll look into on the review this morning before our guest joins us to have a conversation. The chat now, we take a look at what we have on the dailies this morning. Let's begin with the Punch newspaper. On the front page of the Punch, we have a story here that has to do with kidnapping of school children and a security measure that has been put in place. It says UniJos hires hunters to protect campus and hostels. Still on the Punch newspaper, ExRep Lowen jailed 7 years over $10, $500,000 bribe. SFU police assaulted our vice chancellor over invitation letter. That's coming from 4 Southeast governors can't decide actualization of Biafra. That's from IPOB. Away from that story, charmed inspector arrested for gun running. 24 suspects paraded in Cross River State. NBC bills not to moderate but criminalize journalism. That's coming from the Nigerian Guild of Editors. South COVID-19 meeting ends abruptly. Edo blames agency. Now in education news, employers must demand certificates. That's coming from the NYSC body. Akwa Ibom health workers protest against alleged salary slash. Also in education, NYSC suspends core members' accounts over alleged fraudulent redeployment. In Kaduna State, NLC mobilizes for fresh Kaduna strike, alleges agreement has been breached. Detained Ondo and SARS protester released, and as baby christening holds today. And lastly, Kano uncovers 3,268 government teachers in private schools. All of these major stories we can see on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Well, we'll take a look at some of them that have caught the attention of so many Nigerians this morning. Let's begin with the face-off between NLC and Kaduna State. We have a report here where the Punch puts it as NLC mobilizes for fresh Kaduna strike, alleges agreement breach. Now, the Nigeria Labour Congress on Tuesday said it will resume its suspended industrial action in Kaduna State over the mass sacking of workers and other anti-labor practices by the Governor Nasir El-Rufai administration. Though the NLC was not definite, it directed the state councils and affiliate unions to mobilize and officially communicate to all employers of labor in the state for the latest action. The NLC took this decision after the Emergency National Executive Council meeting, which was presided over by the President, Ayub Bawaba, on Tuesday. Now we know that there was a face-off several weeks ago between the NLC, the Nigeria Labour Congress, and Kaduna State government, where there were protests, and at a point it seemed like thugs had invaded and taken over the protest. However, a memorandum of understanding was reached at a point, and they called off the strike. Now the president of NLC, Ayub Bawaba, has raised concerns, saying the memorandum of understanding has been breached by the Kaduna State government, and in view of that, they were going to resume the strike, although no specific date was given for when the strike would resume. This is coming as they've also begun an indefinite strike in Nasarawa State after alleging poor payment of salaries to its members, and they've also, kicked against gender-based violence. And the major issue that the NLC is kicking against in Kaduna State in the Memorandum of Understanding is the no victimization clause. They have accused the Kaduna State government of victimizing several members of the Nigeria Labour Congress, and in view of this, they are threatening to embark on another strike. We would get details of that particular story as it unfolds. Moving on to another story on the Punch newspaper, ExRep Lowen jailed 7 years over Otedola's $500,000 bribe. The High Court of the Federal Capital Territory, sitting on Tuesday, convicted and sentenced a former member of the House of Representatives, Farouk Lawan, for demanding a $3 million and bribe and receiving $500,000 from businessman Femi Otedola. The court found Lawan guilty of 3 charges against him and sentenced him to 7 years imprisonment for the first count, 7 years for the second count, and 5 years for the third count. The jail terms will run concurrently. Now we got this report yesterday, how that the court in Abuja had sentenced him to 7 years, and this is coming at a time when the prosecution accused him of demanding bribe from Otedola as an inducement to remove his company from the list of indicted companies before the House of Representatives ad hoc committee on fuel subsidy. This incident seemed to have taken place in 2012, and it is a lot of Nigerians are looking at the time frame, which is about 9 years from when the incident took place to when judgment is being passed. And we saw him yesterday, how after the court hearing, he was, all everywhere. He seemed to, a lot of Nigerians were wondering why there was no show of remorse, while there was no he seemed to be, as we can see on the screen, there was a part where he was smiling even as he was working, and this is just as his lawyer have said they would appeal the sentence. I would like us to take a listen to what his lawyer said.
I heard a brief of Chief Mike Ozekome, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, as the lead counsel for the defendant in this case, in which the Honorable Court has just delivered a judgment.
So let us hear your feeling after listening to the judgment of the court and what the decision of your team will be going forward.
It's very clear we are clearly dissatisfied with the judgment delivered by the court for very serious legal issues, and there is no doubt that we are appealing the judgment in every respect. We are going to the Court of Appeal, and there's the option constitutionally open to us, and we are going to explore it to the fullest right away.
All right, I think there's no point in asking for that, but we don't want to have your name recorded so that we can get it right.
That's our position.
Your name?
My name, Benson Igbano.
All right, there you have it. That's the report the lawyer had given on that. And we are looking forward to how this conversation eventually plays out, because Nigerians have come out to react to this, and they're wondering if this particular sentence would actually be effected? We'll have that conversation also when our guest joins us on the review this morning. Let's quickly delve into another story. In education news, UniJOS hires hunters to protect campus and hostels. Now, following the security challenges facing the country, authorities of the University of Jos have engaged the services of local hunters to protect students on campuses and their hostels. The outgoing Vice-Chancellor of the university, Professor Sebastian Michael, who disclosed this on Tuesday during the valedictory session to mark the end of his 5-year tenure, said, and I quote, "It is no longer news that the security situation in the country is quite tenuous. This is why, under my administration, we made frantic efforts to ensure that all lives and properties within the university are adequately protected." And now, just a while ago, a lecturer in the University of Jos regained his freedom after he was abducted by bandits. This is one of the major backdrops in which the outgoing Vice-Chancellor in person of Professor Sebastian has given this directive to ensure that that is put in place to secure lives. But the big question is, how effective would the employment of hunters to safeguard schools, campuses, how effective would it be, considering the fact that we've heard the cases where eyewitness reports have said bandits come with AK-47s, come in large numbers to abduct the students. So we wonder, how exactly would this be effected? We are looking forward to seeing the implementation. Right now we have Barrister Timi Olaguju, a policy analyst, public affairs analyst, and IP tech lawyer, to continue the conversation on major topics on the front pages this morning. Good morning, Timi Olaguju. Thank you for joining us on Newspaper Review.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's move straight to what we have this morning, a major story talking about the former House of Representatives member that has been convicted and sentenced to 7 years in prison over the $500,000 bribe that was gotten from Otedola. And, you know, this is coming after 9 years since the case was first reported. What do you make out of this issue generally?
Well, I think the case has lingered on for a while. But to a large extent, it's a long overdue subject matter. I just sincerely hope that it is not a picky judgment or a picky fight against corruption, and that such, result of such issues spread around all those who particularly are involved in, corruption in one sense or the other. Because really, corruption is the cancer that has hidden deep on the lifeblood of this nation. Yes.
Okay, so I'm sure you're aware that before now there have been cases of corruption coming up, and we've had lengthy period of years before these issues are addressed, and this is also an example of it. Why do you think the legal system in Nigeria takes so much time to address issues, particularly when it has to do with corruption?
Well, the truth about it is that you cannot separate our judicial system or our democratic system from the umbilical cord of political, manipulation and what I call jingoism, right? So that is a core challenge with developing democracies. And aside that is the fact that sometimes also the parties involved might want to file one counterclaim or the other, and all that, back and forth, all these lengthens, the time through which justice is served or evidently seen to be served. But you must also know that the case might not even end there. It might go for an appeal.
Yeah.
And so
right.
if it goes for an appeal, that is another round of case again.
So talking about appeal, I was going to come to that because we took a video earlier of what his lawyer said, saying they were going to go to the Court of Appeal to appeal the case. And like you just rightly mentioned, that would take another process. Now, do we think all of these processes would eventually make this case become forgotten, in the sense that the jail term and the sentence term would not actually be affected? Do we see the possibility of that?
That is also a possibility, and there's a possibility that elections are coming on board, 2023, right?
Right.
And then once elections come on board, political players will start looking how to curry favors of political bigwigs and generals, and will not want to, draw enemies or attention to themselves. So it's possible that this matter lingers, through appeal. And this is still the High Court. You can appeal to the Court of Appeal. That can take how many years? You can then appeal to the Supreme Court, which can take another lengthy period of years. So that is a court challenge. I think one of the way forward will be setting up a special court that deals with issues that border on corruption, and to ensure that justice, because delay denies justice, and justice must not only be done, but evidently seen to be done. And when you see a situation where justice is delayed, as in this context, however way you look at it, the challenge is that people start to have an issue with trust in the third arm of government, which is the judiciary, and in the entire political democracy that we practice.
Okay, so you earlier on you mentioned setting up a special court to look into issues like this. I recall a while ago there was a conversation surrounding setting up a special panel and a special court to address issues, especially when it has to do with corruption. But it seemed not to have, made its way into the political or the electoral system in Nigeria. Do you think at this point that would really be considered in the country?
Well, the truth about it's a good question you ask. The truth about it is, as much as I don't like to cite this quote, but I will. Niccolo Machiavelli in The Prince said, there is nothing more difficult to do or more doubtful of success than to initiate a new order of things, because the lukewarm defenders are those who profit by the old order. As long as you have those who profit by the old order deciding their affairs of how this country moves forward or navigates in that context, then you might as well be doubtful of anything coming out of such suggestions, because they will not want suggestions that will come back to haunt them. Look at the case of the EFCC. However, it takes a strong presidential will if we have what we call a strong presidential will, because the president in Nigeria is one of the strongest offices in the country that can make that happen. But if there is no strong presidential will, and what we have is a body language that says they are fighting corruption, but in the whole environment of that body language, you can see corruption fester, right? Like cankerworm. Then you are not confident that there can be any productive result, such as a special court. Please note, for political corruption, because corruption is everywhere in Nigeria, look, the fact that you see a zebra crossing and you decided not to wait at the zebra crossing when you see people that are supposed to cross itself is corruption. Because from the Latin word, corruption simply means a detour from what is the state of things. And most times we have Nigerians commit detour in what is the state of things. When you take a nylon, you drink plastic water, and instead of throwing it into the dustbin, you decided to litter the grounds of an expressway. That in itself is some level of corruption, right? But in this context, we are saying political corruption. Why political corruption? Because political corruption is what has festered into our system such that other kinds of corruption have now become a normal thing amongst the citizens.
That's quite a very, very huge one there. But let me ask you this particular question surrounding corruption in relation to the Constitution review. Now, I'm sure you're aware of the conversation surrounding the review and amendment of the 1999 Constitution in the country. Do you think that if that particular amendment and review is implemented, this would also help to, change things in terms of corruption in the country?
What you mentioned reminds me of what Shakespeare said to Brutus in his book, when he mentioned that the problem, dear Brutus, It's not in our stars, but in ourselves that we are underlings. As much as it is important that we have a constitution in frame that is really the we the people constitution, not a constitution based on military, what the military thought was best for Nigeria, right? A constitution that not only goes back to the 1963 status quo, but also revisits our amalgamation as far back as 1914, right? Now, the truth about it is this. As much as we need that kind of constitution, it is not just about the constitution as a document, but the constitution of the minds of the Nigerian people, particularly the minds of the political leadership. Because, look, whatever the political leadership does festers down into what Nigeria does, right? Because, look, the truth about it is culture, not politics, determines the success of a nation. But politics can change a culture and deliver it from itself. So the challenge is with the culture of the Nigerian people and the fact that politics itself is not helping us to drive a culture that can drive us towards productivity. So those are the core challenges. However, in terms of the constitution, right, the truth about it is this. The current approach to our constitution review, I was part of the Senate committee for constitutional review. I spoke there. I spoke at the House of Representative Committee on review, and so far so good. The approach where we sit down in a small room with some elites like us who say a lot of English, right, without a proper representation of the people in that context, cannot drive us towards that constitution that will restore a conversation around whether the 1914 issue, right? And so that is very important.
You said you were part of the Senate committee and House of Reps committee on this particular conversation on constitutional review. With your physical presence there and with the fact that you have a wide knowledge on the particular issue, I recall there were talks about how Nigerians are not submitting several memoranda to effect the change. Do you think that it is making headway, or what do you think can you give us an analysis of where exactly this particular review is heading?
Well, we must commend the National Assembly. I like the fact that they are trying to take a step, albeit too late, but it is better later than never. Yeah. Why too late? It's close to elections. By next year now, the jingle bells of electioneering will take over the entire atmosphere, right? And what we'll see is elections everywhere. Now, but never later is better later than never. However, the core challenge, even with the whole process, was that a lot of people, the information didn't go around. A lot of people heard about it late. Right? So, for example, I myself, even despite my engagement in the process, heard about it, I think 48 or less than 48 hours to the program. And then we had to start putting in our memorandum together, because without a memorandum, you cannot present. Now, how many Nigerians even that want to participate know how to put together a memorandum?
Very true.
Right? Is there a formal civic policy education on how to even put together a memorandum, as much as even to present before such panels? So you can see that the time frame was short, even for the House of Reps. As much as I commend the approach, the House of Reps committee hearing, I heard about it, imagine, the night or before the whole process.
Wow.
Right? So the information did not really circle. Only very few people are so passionate as to get the information and to act on it. Now, what of those who do not have a control over their time but want to participate in it? For example, it is fixed on a weekday. A weekday is a work day, right? How do you expect somebody who wants to participate to now leave their workplace or get permission in their workplace to attend such hearing? How many media houses were even aware as much of the sitting early as to have prepared for it? So these are core challenges around participation that we need to work on carefully. So I commend the approach, but we can do better with the process to ensure that there's inclusive participation.
Okay, I trust that moves will be made to do better and improve participation in that area. Let's quickly move away from that. Let's talk about education in Nigeria. We're aware of the incessant kidnapping of school students on campus and hostels, you know, even teachers. And just earlier this week, Ahmad Sheikh Gumi made a statement. He has been in the news for a while now, saying if the federal government of Nigeria does not pay ransom to bandits, the kidnapping of school children would still continue. And now we have a report on the Punch newspaper how the University of Jos has hired hunters to protect campuses and hostels. Do you think, let's begin with the statement made by Sheikh Ahmad Gumi with regards to kidnapping of school children.
Oh, well, that's an entirely interesting framework, itself. The truth about it is this. When you have a mad person, right, and this particular mad person has decided to cross over from holding cutlasses to macheting people that walk on the streets, what situation do you have? That is now murder. That is no more madness, right? And so would you go around trying to come dancing macabre dance to negotiate with that mad person who has decided to start maiming and killing, murdering people? That for long.
Are you there, Timmy?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yes, for a long time we seem to have accommodated a negotiation with evil, and that is not acceptable. When there is evil, we deal with evil with an evil blow from the government, with force from the government. But this process where the government is seemingly, encouraging some level of negotiation for no just cause is completely unacceptable. The government can do better. The intelligence agencies can do better. The military can do better. They are not as trained as the military. They don't have as much intelligence as the military. But the problem is that corruption itself and saboteurs are in governments and are encouraging a culture of negotiation. Okay. And we need to be careful because that has not worked.
Okay, at this point now, it seems like state government and state governors generally are beginning to, employ means to ensure that the schools in their state are safe. And now, just as you just has said that they are making moves to employ the services of local hunters to protect schools and campuses. Do you think this particular move will suffice in regards to the way and manner Eyewitness Report have reported that these bandits come to attack schools?
Well, that is a good approach from the state governments, but the state governments must push the frontiers of their boundaries, right? Local hunters, what are they using? Wooden guns, guns. Whereas bandits come, we see them with AK-47 and all kinds of weaponry displayed in thin air, right? So can wooden guns be enough to tackle the firepower of the bandits? Absolutely not. So it is a good step. But look, if the federal government will decide not to equip state governments with the weapons, the sophistication to deal with this issue, the state government should take it upon themselves. You see, there's this wrong argument everywhere that ammunitions and all sorts are within the exclusive list and only the federal government can deal with such matters. That is an absolutely wrong perception because Section 20 of the Constitution states that the state governments are the security, provide security leadership to their states. Also, in the same exclusive list, there is no mention of security. So if the state governments provide security for their state, is it security employing local hunters alone? No. Security means that you are also able to get the firepower to be security, or else you are just like every ordinary citizen. And so that is where the state government needs to push their frontiers to begin to see that the federal government allows, and if they don't, move forward to start acquiring the necessary weapon power to deal with bandits. Because look, you cannot keep saying that you do not have power, to deal, but state governments get security allocation. By that policy framework where they get security votes, does that not mean that they are in charge of the security of their states? Or how can the drafters of the Nigerian Constitution have contemplated that it will give security of states to state governments and then it will not give them the weapons to be able to deal with security? That is not absolutely acceptable. So state governments need to take a step further. If it means that they will have to go to the Supreme Court or whatever courts, they need to take the bold step further to ensure that they fully equip their security apparatus to deal with the bandits, firepower.
Okay.
Or else we are joking. What can hunters do?
We sincerely hope that state government would employ some of the suggestions you've given in the fight against banditry and insecurity in different parts of the country. We wrap up the conversation here with Timi Olagunjo this morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Newspaper Review and for sharing your thoughts with us on the review this morning.
Thank you for having me. Fantastic conversation.
Thank you. Do have an amazing day.
Yeah, you too.
That's as much as we can take on the review this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Major thanks to our public affairs analyst Timi Olagunjo for sharing his thoughts on major issues happening on the front pages of the papers. Remember, you can again join us at 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. to get updates on all of the stories and even more stories on news around the globe. I am Sarah Owusu-Ansah. Ensure to stay safe and observe all safety precautionary measures that have been put in place. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.